now it's becoming more of it's becoming like the deal today, like the social media stuff today, that everything's image-based.
Yeah.
I mean, like, keeping up with the Kardashians is like a major show.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
like, that's a major show.
Yeah.
Like, that's hilarious. Like people watch that. Like,
Right.
and because those are like the most image-conscious people of all time.
Right.
And it's like that society today. It's like all image-based. So you say, how's that relate to basketball? I mean, people would rather be tweeting about, well, I'm ranked number 44 in the country, this, that, I'm ranked number this and that, like, than just be a really good player.
Yeah.
You know, like Shane Battier, who I love.
Yeah.
Like Grant Hill, those type of guys. They don't exist, you know, today. Like Jordan, like they talk about the difference today now between, you know, performers and competitors. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. 100%.
Yeah, I mean, all you got performers today. You know,
Yeah,
competitors are just completely different, you know.
Well, can we talk about that a little bit then?
Yeah, sure.
Because, you know, welcome to the Exploring the Mindside podcast, and you just heard a little preamble to our conversation, and I was hoping we were recording it because we weren't. It was brilliant. Bucky McMillan from Mountain Brook High School in Birmingham, Alabama, one of the best high school coaches around. And the reason I wanted you to have on this podcast is kind of what we were just talking about, performers versus competitors, and maintaining a competitive mindset throughout your entire players. See, Coach, I have a belief that we're losing the competitive mindset of our juniors. They're coming out trying to do it right, not do it to get it done. And what you were just alluding to, the Michael Jordans, the Shane Battiers, the Grant Hills, playing with injuries,
Yep.
you know, grinding.
Yep.
Where are we going with this?
Yeah, I mean, it's a whole deal with society. I mean, when you look at the social media world, like, I mean, I saw a quote one time that was so great. It said, if only my life was as good as I pretended it was on Facebook.
Yeah.
And I was like, is that like everybody today?
Everybody.
You know, and that's trickled to athletics. So, like, when you look at, like, Jordan, when he played, you know, he didn't care if it was in a Bulls practice in the summer or if it was in the NBA Finals with everybody watching. You know, he played because he had a burning desire to compete inside of him. You know, I can't think of one moment. I can think of only one, actually, when Jordan ever even looks at the crowd during play. And that was when he made a three, and he looks at Magic Johnson, who's not in the crowd. He's just a friend of the sideline and kind of shrugs his shoulders like, man, I got it going on right now.
Yeah.
I can't think of one.
But that was another competitor, though.
That's exactly.
It wasn't like Joe Bob sitting up in the stands.
That's exactly right.
That was like, I'm calling you out because this is what we dig.
That's exactly right. And I can't think of one game where these great players who are performers today, like LeBron, haven't looked up in the crowd. You know, you'll watch them get an N1 dunk, and they're all in the crowd, all looking up in the crowd. And y'all see that. See, Jordan was so busy about dominating who he was playing. He could have cared less what the crowd thought. Yeah. He could have cared less about the image of it, you know, and that's the way it's going. And I really think that, you know, one thing when I've talked to our players, and we have some good players here, and we have one really high-profile player who's, you know, has a chance to play at the highest level. And, you know, I've told him that, you know, to be different now would be to be that elite competitor, to be that Shane Battier who does it right and competes every time he plays. To be average now is to be that cool player who's playing to perform.
Yeah.
You know, and
who can't get along with teammates. It's all about a contract or playing time.
It's all about image.
Yeah, it's all about image.
Yeah.
How do you handle that when a kid comes in? Because you've had a successful program, and we look at the banners here. You've had a program where the kids have to buy in. I mean, you're not a rental place. I mean, you're developing players. So how do you get those kids to buy in from the beginning? Because in today's world, I mean, God, I just saw a stat: 14% of the NCAA males have transferred.
Yeah.
High school, my gosh.
Yeah.
They're moving like they're, you know, on a free agent market.
Yep.
How do you handle that?
Well, I think the biggest thing with us is, you know, our thing is this, and I think this gets lost sometimes in coaching. I think sometimes coaches, they think coaching is that great play at the end of the game. Like there's a lot of coaches that I know around here that may not be the best X and O guy. You know, you'll see them play a game, and they're not great X and O guy. But their teams play incredibly hard. They play unselfish, and they play with great confidence. And a lot of people are like, hey, he's not a very good coach. Right? And then I know a lot of guys that are great X and O guys, but their team doesn't play extremely hard. They don't play together necessarily, you know, and they don't play with a lot of confidence, but run some good plays like, hey, he's a great coach. You know, and so you ask the question, like, you know, around here, our biggest deal is we want our players to play as hard as possible all the time. That's the number one thing we look for. You know, we tell our team, you know, that you got to give 100% 100% of the time.
Mm.
So I was saying on our team, anyone can give 100% sometimes or 98% of the time. And anybody can give almost all themselves all the time. People give 90% of themselves all the time. But you got to give 100% of yourself 100% of the time. Then we talk about we're going to play unselfish and play for each other. We tell our team we don't have a true team unless every single player on our team gives up something they may individually want to accomplish that season for the sake of the team.
Hmm.
You don't have a team until that's happened. And then when you have that, when you got guys that are all going to give 100% of the time, and they're going to play for the team and play together, then you have a great confidence about yourself. And so how does that relate to players who have to buy in? Well, the number one thing is effort in playing together and playing with confidence, and that's what you're going to first. Well, it doesn't matter if you can make three-pointers from 25 feet, from 28 feet. It doesn't matter about your social media standing, how many followers you have on Twitter or your Instagram numbers. That doesn't matter. And so I think that's what's been lost a little bit, in the past 10 years is competing.
Have you lost a player in that?
Yeah, we have. We
Yeah.
have. Yeah, we have. I'm not going to get into obviously specifics of it, but it's an interesting story. We had a demanding situation with the player, in terms of the position he wanted to play and wanted to put demands, and it's funny because the player who would have probably not got to play that much, who was his backup, ends up getting to play because this player went to another place, and he ends up getting to play. He becomes, this is a kid who didn't make the team in 7th grade, didn't make the team in 8th grade, gets on the team in 9th grade just to be a part of it. 10th grade doesn't play it much. This guy leaves. He gets to play a little in 11th grade, wins a state championship, and then by senior year becomes a great player. Gets a Division I college scholarship, plays 4 years of NCAA Division I basketball, and it was the exact type of player that was a competitor every single day. It was that type of player that you just love to coach. You talk about people talking about, like, this guy's a player's coach.
Yeah.
Well, not enough is said about a coach's player.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You don't hear that very much.
Well, it's funny. I tell players all the time that when I speak to teams, I'm like, guys, listen, girls, coaches play favorites.
Yeah.
They do. It does not mean that they're playing favorites because they like them better than you. Their favorites are the players they can trust, the players that they know give effort when they don't have their best A game, players that are doing what it takes to open up another player on the team. And I think players lose that.
I agree 100%.
They see that as like, why am I not getting picked?
Yeah.
Why is coach liking it? Why are they? But that player missed a couple shots today. Man, I wouldn't miss that shot. And I'm like, but you missed the other things in the game that's got that player on the court.
Well, when it comes down to the end of the game, I tell our team this every year. I never play our best players in the game. I play our best competitors.
Oh, wow.
I mean, that's what it comes down to, because when my life's on the line, our team's life's on the line, everyone's life's on the line. I mean, your best players, that's one thing, but the guy that's going to compete the best, compete the hardest, compete like his life's on the line and his family's life's on the line, that's who you trust. That's who you trust. And I would say that would probably trickle to probably any avenue of life. Let's say you have your own business. You may have a great, smart business mind, but then you have somebody who tries to close the deal like his life's on the line to close that deal. Yeah. And maybe he's not as talented. Maybe his business mind isn't there, but he'll stay up all hours of the night to close that deal. And we had a great speaker come talk to us. His name is Joey Davenport, who played at Samford, and he talks to our team all the time. He's, if you saw him, you wouldn't think he looks like he would be a dominant basketball player. He played in Kentucky, was one of the leading scorers up there. He actually holds the record right now for most free throw attempts in Kentucky high school basketball. That's a big deal. Then at Samford, when he came to Samford, he was one of the leading scorers in Samford and led the entire conference and one of the leaders in the country in attempts at the free throw line. So what does that say about getting the free throw line? There's a real determination there.
That's a determination, yeah.
Yeah, and he talked about that, one thing he told himself over and over was that this is what his deal was when he was young. He knew he wanted to play basketball. Over and over in his mind, he said, my will to score will be greater than my opponent's will to guard me. And every day he would tell himself that. My will to score will be greater than my opponent's will to guard me. And I talked to our players about that. Like, what if you applied that to everything you did? We talk about closing that business deal. My will to close this business deal will be greater than their will to tell me no. You got to stay up and like study really hard for a test. My will to stay up and study will be greater than my body's will to fatigue me. And that's talking to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I know I
But
got off
but
track.
it's true. No, but it's so true because a lot of the entrepreneurial people that I love to study, the sales leaders and everything. When you hear their stories about, it, they're brilliant salespeople or brilliant business leaders. They often talk is like, I grew up, I slept for months on a couch,
Hmm.
and I'm not going back there.
Yep.
That next sale is the most important sale I could make. The next business deal, the next, whatever. And it hits me sometimes too. Is if I'm out going around and speaking or working with people, sometimes you're like, hey, look, I'll just do this next one. It's whatever. And when you look out in the audience and somebody looks at you and you're not prepared, it's a terrible feeling.
Hmm.
But when you walk out and you got it. Like we did a podcast interview with Paul Janaway from St. Paul and the Broken Bones. Birmingham just lives the jazz music. And he talked about walking out on stage and finding somebody to change their life. And he works so hard to get into that mindset before he ever goes out on stage. So he's not selling out. I mean,
Yeah.
he's in it every time. But for athletes, they want safety first. They want protection first. They want to know that you like them.
Yeah.
They want to make sure that their 4,700 Twitter followers know it's all okay.
Yeah.
So how do you break that?
It's so true. I mean, all the stuff you're saying is so true. I do know this. There's no key to breaking something, one day. It is a process with mind training. You know
Yeah.
that. I mean,
Yeah.
you know that as well as anybody. I've listened to everything that I've come up with. I've heard at some point from somewhere. I can't give you a word cited for it all.
Yeah.
But I heard someone talk about eyesight versus mindsight one time. I thought it was a really cool deal. They're talking about this. Like, you can have two players, okay? One can go in there, he's going out for the 7th grade team. And he looks on there, did he make the team? He looks on there and he sees it. His name's not on the list. And he's, and he sees that with his eyes. And his mind sight says, I knew I'd never make it. I knew I can't do this. I got to do something else. I can't do this. I just can't do it. I can't play. I'm going to have to find something else to do. It's not for me. Then you have another player that goes in there, same eyesight. They see their name's not on the list. Equal talent as the other player. But his mindset is, I will never feel this again. I will never feel this again. And I will work and do whatever I have to do so that I'm back here the next year. And, we've had players, some of our most successful players, never made the team in 7th or 8th grade basketball. We played in 5 of the last 6 state championships, okay? And so I'm saying that for this reason because, you say, well, some of our successful players didn't make the 7th or 8th grade team, and you said, well, y'all have a losing record every year. I understand. I'm saying we've been competing at the top with some guys that never made the team in that grade, and I think it relates to what you're saying, the level of hunger in some of those guys to say that I'm never going to feel like I felt back then.
Mm-hmm.
Is different. Than some players who may have not had to face that adversity. You hear Nick Saban say it all the time about it. If you have not done something or you've had to overcome adversity, you can't accomplish anything significant in your life because the whole point of something being significant is that you had to overcome tremendous adversity to accomplish it in the first place. That's what makes it significant, and that's what's lost a lot.
It's funny you say that because I get exactly what you're saying about, maybe the most talented kids in your program aren't the ones that are hanging the banners.
Mm-hmm.
It's the ones that won it the most. At LSU, when Coach Burtman won 5 national titles, 10 years, our teams were filled with preferred walk-ons.
Mm-hmm.
I was one. Our second baseman, shortstop, were one. They played in the Olympics. But he loved the preferred walk-on mentality because he knew there was a hunger and a fire sitting there going, well, you got the big money. I'm here on books on my academic ride. But I've dreamt of playing in the purple and gold. I've wanted to play in front of 10,000 people at Alex Box Stadium. This is my dream. And some of those guys turned out being long-term major leaguers.
Yep.
But it's that fire. And I see so many coaches afraid to put that philosophy out, though. It doesn't matter the sport. They're so afraid because they get seduced by talent as if it's saving their job.
Yeah, I agree. The biggest thing I think that we're talking around, or we're saying it, but we're bouncing around it, is the number one thing is that people do not want to see adversity as much. It's not as common. Adversity is shielded from kids a little more today than it has
Big
been
time.
in the past. And one of the things I think when we really step to the next level in terms of our performance here, because we were knocking on the door in 2009, 2010, 2011, like we're getting to regionals consistently, but we couldn't knock through that door to get to the Civic Center. And I noticed something. I noticed that we would get there, and we were playing great teams. But when we shoot a free throw at the end of the game, or three, we felt like, because we're at a successful place here at Mountain Brook in terms of academically,
Oh, yeah.
athletically, we've been good, high socioeconomic status. It's not okay to fail. That's one thing. Like, it's not okay to come home with the C. It's not okay to, get in trouble. It's not okay to, and those are all good things. But the same thing would happen athletically, that you could go to a game, it's like, well, if I miss this free throw right here, man, it's not okay to miss this free throw. Where you may take someone from another community who hasn't experienced some of these great things in life. They don't have maybe the best grades. They may not have the best attire to wear to school every day. They don't get to go home and have meals to eat. But, man, I may make this free throw. I may be somebody. And it's a different mindset. And it's a different level of confidence in the whole way the world's not on someone's shoulders. And that's when we talked about here about talking about how hard we had to play.
Yeah.
I'll spare you on that and how unselfish we have to play. But the number one thing is after you do that, you got to be fearless. You have to be fearless, and you can't be results-oriented with everything you do.
Can you see a kid, though, as you're moving through? Because I can coach it from the side and give a kid information if they come to see me, but I'm not the one that's got their hands on them. It's getting them at their low moments in practice. Now, I think it's amazing to do that. I think we need to get our kids in those depths sometimes in practice. But can you see that kid, like Coach used to call it graduation, when a player graduated, that they no longer played to protect anything. They it's like walking down the stage. In high school you don't really know anything, but you graduate and all of a sudden you got to kind of make some choices, right? Can you see that coming, or is it sometimes just like this shock bolt of lightning that hits for a kid?
You can see it coming. What I think the most important thing that we try to do to emphasize that and to get someone out of that shell, we try to make, because I talked about that it's the fear of adversity, the fear of the challenge. We try to make our practices, our running, and everything we do so incredibly difficult that they don't think they're going to be able to get through it ever. You know what I'm saying? Well, they never think they're going to be able to get through it. And what starts to happen when you start to accomplish things that you never thought that you could get through, then all of a sudden your mindset changes to the next thing that you're like, I don't know if I can get through this, if I can do this. But you have this history now of all these other times that you have gotten through this. And when you start looking at some of the greatest stories told, it's not things like the Miracle on Ice, right? You look at that. Or, you can look at other situations like the Miracle on Ice, just things throughout history, sporting events that became movies and they became so inspirational. Why were they inspirational? Like, was the Miracle on Ice so inspirational because, well, we hadn't beat the Russians before? No, that wasn't it. The most impactful things in life are not things that have not been done before, because inevitably there's some things that haven't been done before that should be done.
Yeah.
The most impactful things in life are things that people thought were impossible to do, and it was done. The Nelson Mandela quote, it seems impossible until it's done. And that's the same thing for an athlete. Until they do something, not that they haven't done before, but that they thought was impossible to do, they don't really believe they can overcome the next impossible thing. And that's why I think it's so important in this day and age, to have serious adversity that people think are impossible to overcome. You could talk about the Roger Bannister stuff, the 4-minute mile. No one could run a 4-minute mile. Roger Bannister breaks 4-minute mile, and how many we have run a 4-minute mile the next 6 months? It was crazy, right? That was an impossible feat, but once it was broken, well, it inspired others, And I think that's very important for athletes, that they are able to overcome things, not that they haven't done, but that they think was impossible to do in the first place.
Where did you come from? How did you end up in this seat?
So my situation was this, and it ties into this what we're talking about. So I went to Mountain Brook High School. I'm from here.
Okay, so you're an alum.
But when I came through here, I decided when I was in the first grade I wanted to play Division I basketball. Okay, that would have been like somebody maybe from an inner city school where it's not a golf school saying I want to play Division I golf.
Yeah.
You know, people laughed at me. That wasn't what you do here.
Yeah.
Basketball was not what you do here, and people from Mountain Brook do not go play Division I basketball. And I asked my dad, what is it going to take? That's what I want to do. He said, I mean, the minimum you can practice every day is 2 hours. 2 hours. That's the minimum you can practice. And so every single day, 2 hours, 2 hours, 2 hours, 2 hours, 2 hours. I get to high school and, junior high, 3, 4, some days 6 hours, 7 hours. Well, I go through all this. I became a very good player. Our basketball gets a little bit better around here. I was an all-state guy. And I don't have a Division I scholarship offer coming out of high school. When I'm telling you I put everything into it, I put everything into it. I'm talking about on Saturday 7, 8 hours. I'm talking about I didn't go to prom because I had to practice. I didn't go to dances. I didn't go to this. I put my life into it. Friday nights, it was a lonely life. I'd be in the gym by myself. And so when I'm sitting there, I'm like, okay, now it's time to work out for me. I did not have that Division I offer that I thought I would have. So I went to Birmingham Southern, which was a Division I school at the time. I walked on. And I just remember this, how hungry I was to be a scholarship player to play Division I basketball. I go there. I work. If I was working at that point in high school, going from like 2 to about 4 hours, I started working like crazy. I'm talking 6 hours a day. It was crazy. And I remember that. I went there in the spring of my senior year in high school, started playing with them. And I was the last player picked up every time. And the last player picked up. This is this walk on, this, that, and another. I mean, it drove me. And I remember working every day for hours upon hours. We finally get to the fall. In our first individual workout. And this is in front of the coaches. It's going to be 2 freshmen versus 2 seniors. I'm like, this is my time to finally show them. I've worked so hard. I put it all in. I go to the first individual workout, and I'm like, here we go, we're playing against 2 seniors. And I get destroyed. I get destroyed. When I'm telling you, nothing could go right.
Right.
Nothing could go right. I'm talking about.
And this was your Final Four moment.
This was it. And I just remember, giving it all. I remember going down to the locker room. I'm not afraid to say this. When everyone left, I just locked myself in the stall. And I just remember just tears running down my face. I'm not talking about crying. I'm talking about blood tears. Where you feel it and you're bleeding inside. And I just remember what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to, how much more can I do? And I remember that moment very vividly because I think there's a moment in everyone's life where you kind of go from a boy's mentality to a man's mentality, and you just say, whatever it takes, I'm going to do, and you lose whatever that is, your ego.
That you've been holding on to, that safety blanket.
That's exactly right. And I just remember I sat in there, and that was one of the decisions I had to make. I'm either going to say this is it, or I'm going to say I got to keep going, and I got to find something in me to keep going. I just knew I couldn't turn back. Look what I'd invested. Well, I keep going. I redshirt my first year. By the end of that year, by the spring, I was the first player picked up every single time we played pickup for the next 3-4 years. I became a starter the next year. I played more minutes than anyone in our conference the year after that. And, had a great career over there. And when my career was done over there, okay, I would have had one more year because a new president came in there, changed it from Division I to Division III. I was offered by all these schools. I had offers from Michigan, Alabama, UAB, Troy, about 20 Division I schools to play my last year at one place. And, there was a lot of times, I could have turned back. But the story is not a unique story because, I got all these Division I offers. The story is a unique story because of all the adversity along the way.
Yeah.
And sometimes it looked like it may be impossible to achieve this. I know when I told people when I was younger I wanted to be a Division I, they told me it was impossible. But achieving that and then having those offers and then being on scholarship, and that allowed me to think other things were possible. And so then I immediately came back and coached here.
So right out of college.
Right out of college. And so people.
Were you the head coach or were you?
I came here and coached and helped the guy who coached me in high school, Mark Cornelius, for 2 years as a JV coach.
Okay.
He went to Gardendale where he was from. I took over there. And that same type of belief, no one thought Mountain Brook could win a state championship in basketball. I mean, that was not even on anyone's radar. But I really believed that we could be a great basketball school. And a lot of that belief may have to do with what I talked about, that along the way, no one thought that I could become a Division I basketball player, but I accomplished something that people thought wasn't possible. And that's why I think is very important, is people to see tremendous adversity and accomplish those things, because it puts a belief in their life that they can apply to situation after situation. I have so many players tell me after they've left our program, they're into college and this, that, and another, that they believe they can do about anything. They're going through pledgeship or they're going to do this job interview, and they really feel that their level of belief that what they can accomplish is, greater than a lot of the same people that are going for those same jobs. And they relate a lot of that to athletics and, stuff we've talked about before.
So you've had opportunities to go to college. Why are you still here?
Here's the deal with high school, what I love about it, okay? So in college, you got the guys on your team. You got 12 to 14 guys, and you get to influence them. And there's a big impact you can have as a college coach. And I know that because I had a great college coach who impacted me in incredible ways. Here at Mountain Brook, I have every player from first grade all the way to high school. We run our academy starting in the first grade. We coach AAU basketball. Our high school coaches coach AAU basketball starting with just the Mountain Brook kids starting in the second grade. I got 1,000 guys that we can try to instill that same belief that we've been talking about the whole time. All those values that they can learn, how to overcome adversity, what it means, how to be determined, how to be a competitor, this can apply to your life. Well, for me, 12 to 14 guys versus 1,000 guys, that means something to me. That means something to me. And there may be a time, in my life where I say, my work is done in that regard. And maybe it is a time where where now there's a calling for me to influence kids from the 18 to 22-year-old range. Maybe it's not in basketball, maybe it's in something else. But I know there's nothing more impactful. People say that the greatest influence on people's lives outside their family generally is the coach, And when you feel that you're the coach of not just a school system but an entire community, because that's what we have here. We have a community. Most people that go to Mountain Brook Elementary School in the first grade, they're going to go and graduate from Mountain Brook High School.
Yeah.
So your work with them, can be a 12 to 13-year process. Some of these guys, Paulie Stramaglia, who'll be our point guard this year, I remember when he was in the first grade, he asked me, he said, will you be the coach at Mountain Brook when I'm still here? And I get to high school. And I told Paul, I said, if you're here, I'll be here, right? But that was, that's when he was a first grader. I look at Paulie now, he's one of the best point guards in the state as a junior. And all the times that we've had and all the moments that we've had together, you don't get that at the next level.
Yeah.
You just don't get it.
How do you handle – I hear coaches all the time talking about parents.
Yeah.
And, here at Mountain Brook, you've got very successful parents and high SES and successful competitors in their own right, and they've achieved great things for the most part. And how do you handle that?
Well, I think sometimes parents who are successful, you don't get to quote Mountain Brook by not being successful.
Yeah. And for people who are listening that's outside this area, Mountain Brook is probably the highest SES in the state.
Yeah, it's one of it is, and it's one of the top 15 wealthiest zip codes in the country.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, very unique situation.
Yeah, business owners of major organizations. I don't want to say it's a closed community, but there's no new building going on. If they're building a new house, it's because they tore down another house or two houses and built a bigger house. It's a very wealthy socioeconomic area.
Yep. Well, you don't get to Mountain Brook by, quote, being cut. That's a great way to say it.
That's a good point.
And so I think that the competitive nature of the parents, there can be conflicts because, that competitive nature about you don't get here by being cut. Well, if their son does not make the team, for example, well, that shouldn't have happened.
That shouldn't have happened.
But on the flip side of that, there's a lot of positives to that mindset too. That our kids work extremely hard. And I'm going to say this. Sometimes I get a lot of credit from people about, man, how do you get, perhaps how you get your kids to play so hard, this, that, or another. Let me just tell you this. Our kids come from great homes. They see hard work every day in the home.
I'm glad you said that, because what I want to clarify is when you see somebody in a high SES, most of the time that's a very resourceful parent relationship. They've overcome a lot of challenges, and many times those parents. Having worked with a bunch of Mountain Brook parents, I've never had one that has said, "Where should I take my kid to transfer to if it didn't go well?" What they all look at me and say, "What can I do to instill in my player the get back up mentality that they need in life?"
Yep.
And that's unique, because I was having this conversation with a coach yesterday. I said, Mountain Brook, and just using this for people outside this area, but we all have that zip code. We all have that mentality. When I went to high school like that in Baton Rouge, Catholic high school. And Catholic high school is all boys Catholic school. And, if they want a new gym, they find a donor who writes the check for the gym. There's no fundraising campaign. It's a phone call.
Yeah.
And, it's interesting is that you see, and it was shaped me at that school more than unbelievable, the greatest high school experience you could have. And you see that sometimes there's that, instead of being at that super highly successful level where somebody's had to go through, maybe been fired as a CEO, but has come back as another CEO somewhere else, learn their lessons. They teach many times resourcefulness, the ability to work through challenges. Whereas sometimes in other socioeconomic groups or other neighborhoods where it's like, well, I've got enough influence, I can press on it to make it change. And I see here is it's like, yeah, that you may have pressure, but many times in the home, they're teaching those kids how to, hey, you didn't make it. What are you going to do about it?
Mm-hmm.
Versus, let me go make a phone call and get Bucky removed, and I'll get my guy in there, and we're going to make sure that you're the starting point guard.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And that's what I was going to say is the value of getting to see a parent every day who worked very hard to get to where they are and get to see what a work ethic is. The perception that you're from a high socioeconomic status or wealthy community that must be soft kids, that couldn't be any more untrue.
Not true here.
That just couldn't be any more untrue. And, I tell all of our parents that this, and I think they would agree with it, particularly when they get to the high school age, at the 16, 17-year-old age. When they turn 18 years old, and this would be for any parent across the country, they're doing one of a couple things. They're either at 18 going to college, they're getting a job, they're going to war, or they're out on the streets. We're really a couple years away here from it getting really real.
Mm-hmm.
So the reality of it is all of our stuff, really, we try to deal directly with the kid, and that's what we tell the parents when we're talking about playing time, for example, right? Or we're talking about matters related to the team. That really needs to stay at this point as much as possible between the player and the coach. Because if they're going to go in for a job interview here in a year, they can't send the parent in there to say, hey, why is Johnny not getting a raise? That's just not going to happen. And I tell our players, I'm here to help these athletes in every way. We can communicate about any way to help these athletes. That's not what we're saying.
Right.
But we're doing them a disservice if we're not going to allow them to prepare themselves for life, and they can't come into an open office and talk to the coach about any issues they have with the team, because that's what they're going to have to be doing with their professors in college. That's what they're going to have to be doing for their general if they go to war. That's what they're going to have to be doing if they're out on the streets. Where do I get food? And that's what they're going to have to be doing in the workforce. And I think that's very, very important for people to understand. Yeah.
Skip used to always say, if your parent calls me, I'm just going to be honest with them. You're not good enough.
Yeah.
And he said, but if you're a good kid, you've already told them that.
Yeah.
And that you're working to get better. And I'm going to show them how I'm going to help you get better. But if you're complaining about playing time, then I can't help you.
Yep.
If you're unhappy about playing time and you're willing to do something about it, now I can help you.
Yep, I agree with that.
Coach, thank you so much for doing this. This was awesome.
Thanks for having me.
Cool.